Avengers Assemble! Today we are looking at the Hasbro Iron Man 2 3 3/4 inch figure series, Iron Man Mark II. This was another one of those figures in the Iron Man series that was a little harder to track down. Really seems like all the ones that aren't the traditional Iron Man colors seem to be the rares in this series. And really, this is a must-have, because it plays an important part in both of the Iron Man movies, and I don't think any other armor really plays that role. Of course, it is the prototype in Iron Man 1, the thing that leads him to his true design and eventually the color scheme and all that. You get the first flight in this armor. And then in Iron Man 2, it is the armor taken by Rhodey and turned into War Machine. So a very important figure. If you're going to have an Iron Man figure collection, this has to be in it. It's an important one. Well, then again, you could just say that your collection takes place after Iron Man 2 and this armor's already been stolen and converted into War Machine. But, you know, we're going to pretend that you still need this guy. Since we're going to be covering a lot of Iron Man figures in this series, I'm not going to waste too much time going forward on the basic accessories that they come with. In my Mark I armor review, I cover the stand and the other accessories in detail, so I'm just going to point out real quick. It comes with his stand and his card set. It's 3 separate cards you can use to make up the picture of the armor on here. I haven't taken this one out of its plastic because I always end up losing them or bending them or doing some other horrible thing to them. So these ones are staying nice and pristine. I'm not opening them. Hasbro has yet again given us a giant pointless missile launcher of doom that would never ever be on the character. I mean, this gun is huge. It is the size, it's bigger than his upper torso. That is an enormous gun. I think Tony Stark would have built something a little sleeker. However, they do a good job of keeping it matching the character and the coloration. Has a clip down here that would go onto his arm, and the giant blue missile of doom, which you can take and fire. You know, I rag on these things. They're stupid, but the inner 5-year-old in me still kind of gets a thrill every time I shoot one of these stupid little spring-loaded missiles. On to the figure itself. First off, take a look at the body on this figure. You're going to see it a lot. It's the basic Iron Man buck used for most of these figures, with slight modifications done for all the different things. However, it's still a nice figure as far as paint and everything goes. It's a very nice metallic sheen. I was actually having trouble getting this figure lit for the video because light kept reflecting off of it way too much. The coloration is really nice on it. It also has the deep black lines that some are sculpted in, some are just painted, but it gives it the correct appearance of having all the different little compartments and stuff that the armor has. The head is a really good example of that. You can see all the little cracks and crevices in it. Definite kudos to the Hasbro team on this one, because there's a lot of lines on this figure that need to be crisp and clean in order to work. And they really are. This figure really could have been a disaster of bad lines and sloppy paint. Because with as simple as this figure is, anything out of line would have really looked bad. It would have really made everything stand out as poor design. So they really managed to pull it off. You get a nice splotch of color here with the arc reactor in the chest. I like that they even have the little locking mechanism on the side, as was seen in the early movies. My absolute favorite thing on this figure are the little rivets that are painted on there. They look phenomenal. Really bringing the character to life. As far as articulation goes, he has a ball-jointed head, a fantastic range of movement. I would have almost liked to see some of these Iron Man figures get the hinge and ball joint for the neck, so that the head could go all the way back to make it look like he's, looking up while flying or anything like that. I also would have liked to see maybe even interchangeable to 2 open hands, or even flying hands that were bent out a little further. You can't really get him into a cool flying stance. Any of these Iron Man figures, really. He has the pin and socket shoulders with a good range of mobility. It is slightly hindered by the upper arm protection here, but that's even on a little hinge, so you do get more than you would have if it was just a sculpted piece, which is very nice detail. You can bend at the elbow and also swivel there. And rotate at the wrist. He has a mid-torso ball joint. Again, with the Iron Man figures, this works really well. Sometimes I don't like this on a humanoid figure. I think it looks a little unnatural. I'd rather just have a waist joint a lot of times. But with the Iron Man figures, that is pretty much where you'd want to articulate a big metal suit. Obviously, you have the scaling down the stomach where you'd also be able to bend further, but that looks pretty realistic to me, and I really like the way they pulled that off. Marvel movie legs means you can spin them, and you have to spin the ball itself to be able to get the leg to move other directions. Swivel at the upper leg. Bend the knee at 2 points, but with this nice added part onto the lower leg, you really cover up that knee joint in most poses, and keeps it looking very nice. And then we have a bend at the ankle. And there's a kind of rubbery plastic around it, which hides the joint really well. It looks really nice. Another thing I think is worth pointing out is there's actually sculpting done to the bottom of the feet. You can see the boosters down there and just detail in the boot itself. It's totally a figure covered in detail. There's no spot really that's left bare, which is really impressive. Part of me does wonder about the peg hole in the back. Not really sure what the function of that is. Once again, it would have been nice to have some kind of flight apparatus with at least one of these. Give it a real flying Iron Man look. And seeing as this guy never really saw combat but was the first real test flight of the Iron Man armor, I think this would have been a great candidate for it. Overall, the Mark II armor is another impressive entry in the Iron Man 2 series. I can't recommend it quite as highly as the Mark I, seeing as it is a very similar sculpt to pretty much all the other Iron Man you're going to be getting in this wave, but it's still a cool figure. With the Iron Man 2 line, I found myself finding some figures I'd be willing to pick up at retail price, and other figures I would pick up only if I could find them at a discount. And I gotta say, with the Iron Man 2 line, depending on which figures you're after, finding some at a discount wasn't the hardest thing. However, ones like this guy here were kind of hard to come by at retail, especially if you were late to the game like I was on these figures. So definitely one that's worth the full retail price, and I will recommend him. As I said before, he's an important piece in the Iron Man lore and the Iron Man Hall of Armor, and just a cool looking suit overall. This has been another Outside the Box review. Stay tuned as we continue to count down to Avengers.